Are you guys ready to have some fun? Alright, I won't call this actual fun. My wife would say it's boring. I think it's fun. Alright, so I'm going to continue where I left off on the last video. This video is going to build off of the database handler that I started building in the last video. And so remember, we did the data, the model, and the utility, which is kind of like an MVC format. Alright, so we'll get started. So what we're going to do something called Crude Operations. Have you ever heard of Crude? It's if you actually look it up in database programming, we'll look it up. It's create, read, and update, and delete. And it's basic commands that you use when you're doing a like a web service. So let's say do Crude Java. And what is Crude in Java? Here it is. It's an acronym for the 4 basic types of SQL commands: create, read, update, and delete. Most applications have some kind of CRUD functionality and can assume that every programmer has to deal with CRUD. Actually, I called it Crude. I meant CRUD at set point. A CRUD application is one that uses forms to get data into a database. So if you look on this example here, it's CRUD. It could be, well, they click on create students. It'd pull up, this is using Java Enterprise Edition, it'd pull up forms, and then you can input some information into the screen. So we're not doing a web interface, but just to give you an example. So let's get and start adding some content. So we have our our override here for our on upgrade. And so let's go below here, and I will pull my keyboard, and I will do /* and I'll call it CRUD CRUD. Oh jeez, forgot. Didn't fix that since the last video. Alright, and this is create, read, update, and delete. Perfect. Alright, so at least you know what it is. Alright, so let's increase this. And let's go down there. Alright, good. Alright, so let's add a contact. So we'll do public void add contact and build our shell out here. And I need to move my cord around here. Alright, so we have our shell with our add contact, and we need to describe, we're going to use SQLite database here. So we'll do SQLite database. Geez, we just want database, not locked. Alright, so SQLite database, give it something, I'll call it DB equals this being current, and we want to get writable database, so this guy right here. And we'll close that off. Okay. Then we want to do content values. We'll call it value equals new content value. So we're just creating a new class here, a new object. And let's do this right here. Perfect. And then we'll call that value and say, hey, let's take that value and put it. Putting means sending it in web service call. And we will call our, let's see here, our utility. So we'll call our utility class, our key name, and we're going to have comma, and we're going to have contact dot get name. So we'll have it like this. All right, so I see an issue here. That's all right. Here we have this red space right here. It doesn't recognize it. So what we need to do here is we need to create a parameter, or whatever you want to call it contact, and you could call it anything. So all right, so what did I like here? Contact, that should be fine. So what is going on? So we have this, you know what it is I wish we were in a classroom because I'd ask you what you think it is. All right, so as you see here, we're using our model contact, so we need to add that object or that library. It doesn't know that, well, it knows that we're using something, but it doesn't recognize. So it should be modl for model.contact, and that should allow us to use it because model being the high directory that we're using, and then contact is the name of the, if we go into it, that's the name of the class that we're calling. So I did that. As you see here, it recognizes it. So now I'm able to go over to this over here and get this information. So I'll be able to go over here and say, hey, I want to get the ID, the name, the phone number, and so forth. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. All right, so let's resume here. All right, so now we have one value. We have a SQLite, we have the content. Let's separate that. So we call the value right here. So now we want to also put the value in for our phone number. So we're going to do value dot put, and then we're going to call the utility. And so what we're going to do is we're going to grab the table name. Oops. So I'm going to go back over to the handler here, or not the handler, utility, sorry. And what we're going to do here is we're going to grab the table name because we need to know what table name that we're going to use. We're going to do table name. It's right here waiting for us. And then we're going to do comma. Actually, I lied to you. I just said phone number and I said table name. Alright, so that's silly. So we call it key phone number. That's what we'll do. And we'll do comma. We'll then call the model, which is contact. And what we do is we'll get the phone number. I'll show you how that works in 1 second here. So when we called the contact, you could open up the declaration as well. You could do that, or you could go to and jump to declaration like that, and then it jumps over to that class. But then it takes you back over to here, and as you see here, when we call this main class, we're able to get the phone number. So this is our getter in Java here. All right, so we have get phone number, and now we're going to insert data in the row. Okay, so now this will be our setters. So what did we call our database? We call it db.insert. So that's a value there, or a function. We will call our utility function, and what we'll do, we'll call the table name. This is where I was thinking table name, and we're finding out what the name of our table. And then in this case, we just need a null, and then we want to send a value over. Now we need to close our database. Do database close, and what that does is closes the connection so that we don't leave the connection open. So it's very important to follow that method in anything dealing with databases. You don't want to leave it, or anything in SQL in general, because if you leave the connection open, then it'll just affect performance over time. All right, so now we have the add contact. So let me put something here. So this will be how to, I guess, save it. So we'll say save data. Oh, there we go. Oh, geez. I got to fix those. I'll probably never fix those. All right, and then months later, I'll be like, what is going on? All right, so now instead of saving it, we need to get data. All right, so name it get data. All right, so what we need to do is create a new public I have an idea. All right, so we'll call it public contact, and that's the name of the class that we're using, and then we're going to call it get contact, and we'll do int ID, pass in an ID. So why are we passing an ID? That's pretty simple. So we want to pass in an ID so that we can get the information. So an ID is passed in, and then we look up the information in order to get the value that we're looking for. All right, so once again, we'll have to do SQLite database, and this time I'll call it DB again, but this one's going to be a little bit different. as we did up here, we got get writable. What do you think we're going to do now? If you're thinking get readable, then you were right. Now, if I could spell it right, then that'd be even better. So get readable, awesome, very good. All right, so now we want to do a cursor. So a cursor is something that just kind of, in a database, well, in like Java programming code, we use something called a loop. So in SQL, there's something called a cursor, allows it to do the same thing as a loop. So that's what we're going to do, is create a cursor. So we're going to say cursor equals db.query. We're going to write a query. And when we write this query, we need to contact our utility table, or utility class. And we need to say, hey, we need the table name, and say what table are we working with. And then we're going to do a new string. And on that new string, let's see here, we're going to do the shift and do the little open close bracket. And we're going to include the utility in here. And then we need to include the key ID that we're utilizing, because we need that ID. I'm going to hit comma, come down here, and I'm going to, utility again. And then I'm going to pass in the key name. So we're just passing all these values that we've already set up. And then once again, we're going to use the utility. And we're going to get in the phone number. Boom. And we're going to leave our bracket closed right here. And we're going to do a comma. As you see, as we're typing this whole method is picking everything up. All we're doing is writing a query in a fancy way. And I'll tell you how that works in a minute. So we're going to go back to our utility class. And we'll get our key ID right here. And we're going to say, and then we're going to add on some values there. We're going to say plus equals question mark. So we're creating something called a query string. So if you ever looked up a query string, you know what it is. Anything that you type in a database. So if I would go to, let's see, if I went over here and typed in, let's do it right here. So let's look up, we want to look something up. So we want to look up, let's see here, football scores, NFL scores today, right? So we're like, hey, let's look up the Redskins score. As you see right up here, this is a query string. It's saying, oh, here's a search right here. Search question mark Q equals query equals NFL plus scores. I could probably come in here and change this around a little bit, and don't know if it'll work. I could put NBA, and it might allow me to work. It might not work, but this is basically the query string. So if I do that, it might be not found. Look at that. It worked for a second, so I have something missing there. So there's probably something on the end here that goes directly there. But as you see here, when I clicked on it, it picked it up for a second. I wanted to look at NBA scores. So there's something in that string missing. But you get the gist. That's what we're doing here. All right, so we're going to add a comma here, hit enter. And we're going to do a new string. Hit enter, and it already has that in there. And then I'm going to do another open close brace here. I'm sure I got something wrong here. String dot, and here's the thing, in this aspect of it, just watch what I type in, because if you mess up, it's just something you probably miss. And I haven't got it completely done yet, so who knows. So we're going to do value of, and we're going to pass in ID. There's a lot going on here. Comma. And then we're going to have 4 null values, because it's requesting something that we don't have. We don't have a group by, we don't have a having, an order by, or a limit. A group by is when you group by certain things and get a defined answer. Having is when you're doing some type of, like if you're doing something is greater than or equal to. And an order by is, think of it as an Excel when you're ascending and descending something. A limit meaning, there's a limit of how many characters that you're looking for. So we have none of those values. So I'm going to do null, comma, null, comma. See, as I did that, it says, oh, hit group by, null, nothing, having, nothing, and then it's going to do the string by limit, nothing. Awesome. All right. So let's see here, what else? All right. So do that, and then we should be able to close that off and get perfect. Now we have this guy down here barking. That's because we have to do a return eventually. So we'll do return. Right now we'll do null because we don't have what we're going to return. We'll change that later. So let me go back to this cursor here. So we have cursor, which is, like I said, it's like a loop. When we call our database, this is what's our database. We're doing a query. we're going to the utility page and we're saying, hey, what's the name of the table? So think of this as a function almost. We have one location that we have this, that we have to go and get our table name. We don't have to do it a million different places. Now, could I where am I at? Can I program it in here? Absolutely. I can program it every time. But think about all the time I have to, anytime I want to change that database name or table name, I have to go in all those pages and change it, and it gets too difficult and just too much work to do. See, I like the easy way. All right. And it's also best practice too. All right, so we did a utility, table name, and then we pass in this case right here, when we do the DB query, it's requesting some values, so parameters. So next parameter is we're saying, hey, we're going to do a new string, and then in brackets, that next parameter it wants is what's your key ID, what's the ID that you're using. So that's also over here. So we grab the ID, so we get whatever the ID is, and we don't know what that is because it's all getting done here in the contact in this class. That's where we're getting our information at. Okay, and then our key name, and then our phone number. And then as we started typing things in previous versions of Android, this like selection colon, group by colon, having all this stuff would not even be here. It would be blank, and it would just have null. So this is beautiful that it works like this. So this right here is just us creating our query. Okay, so now we need a conditional statement for our cursor, because what if it doesn't have what we want in it? So what we could do is if cursor, and if you don't have something in it, then it's not going to work. It's going to go on forever. So we'll say if it doesn't equal null, which means if there's an actual value, we want to do something to it. So we'll say cursor dot move to first. We want it to move to the first location. Now, as you've seen here when we type this in, type move, you could do move to last, move to next, move the position, pass in a position, but we want to get the first value and go from there. Okay, now we're going to come down here and we're going to create another contact information. We need to parse information now. So we'll call it contact. Let's just keep everything the same. Oops, equals. We'll say new contact, and then what we'll do is we'll pass it in a way to parse the information. So we'll use an integer dot parse, oops, integer, and then we'll pass in the string, and in this case it'll be cursor dot get string. So we're getting the string, and then we need a value in here, so we'll just keep it 0 because we don't know what that value is going to be. So we have 1 space, 2 space, and then we should have a comma here, and we should have cursor dot get string. In this case we're going to do a 1 to get the first value, and then we're going to do cursor dot get string, and we want to get the second value. Oops, there we go. And then if I do this to close it off, I come down here, and you remember how we had null here? We're just going to change that to contact because we want to get whatever we parse right here in. We want to get this information. All these guys are working with each other in order to get the value. So we're cursor dot, and we're getting the string, this value here, and being able to pull through it. So this aspect right here is pretty much done. We're showing you how to save data. Now we're showing you how to retrieve the data. And that right there concludes this video. So you see what we do. We just added from line, actually the code will be 42 down to 71. So we added like 30, 29, 30 rows of code. Thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next video. Thanks.